So welcome, Kitty. Thank you so much for being a part of this series, Voices from the Land, a collaborative series with Farm School NYC and The New Harvest. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, Kitty.
Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the beginnings of Iridescent Earth Collective. Who is your community and who do you grow food for?
I actually grew up in a community garden in the High Bridge section of the Bronx. And before developing Iridescent Earth Collective, I was working for the New York Botanical Garden with my friends, and COVID happened and we thought we were going to lose our jobs. I remember it was really crazy. It was so quick. On a Monday, it was like, no, it's probably not going to spread. And then by like Tuesday, it was like, well, it's only in, upstate New York or like certain spaces. By Wednesday, it was like, oh, we're going to close the garden. It's in the Bronx. It escalated so quickly and in such a way that we thought for sure we were going to lose our jobs, and we thought for sure that the world would be different forever. And that did happen, but we didn't lose our jobs. We got the invitation from higher ups in the horticulture department to think of or come up with some kind of program that would be supportive or that could possibly save our jobs. And at the time, the only space that we were allowed to be in the city together really publicly were in the community gardens, and only if you were a community gardener. And because the Bronx Green Up programs, the New York City Compost Project programs were so deeply ingrained in community work, at least within the art institution in the Bronx, our day-to-day is working directly with community gardeners, working with greening groups, working with schools and other people who are interested in growing food for their community and distributing it for free. So for us, it was a no-brainer. Like, what if we just grow food and help people grow a lot of food, because the lines look so insane? And surprisingly, they went for that, and it ended up being actually really good for the garden and good for the community. And that program developed into the Bronx Farm Hub program for Bronx Green Up. And that summer, Jessica, my colleague and co-founder of the organization, and I spent a lot of time in several gardens in High Bridge trying to grow food, and realized that we really wanted to do that upstate. But how could we? We didn't have savings. I didn't know how we were ever going to gain access to land. A lot of this was kind of in the dream realm for so long. And I remember my therapist being like, you don't have to wait until you're retired to do this. And I'm like, you're telling me that I can quit my job now and try? So then when COVID happened and there was that scare of losing your job anyway, and because we were growing food together, we'd started drafting a plan to have a agroecological farm or agroecological center where we produced food within a community and provided technical assistance and educational tools to local new farmers, folks interested in farming, and in general, people who are interested in growing food to distribute to people who need it. It just feels really important to make sure your community is good. And I think growing up in Tahquah, my community is High Bridge, it's my family, but working in the Bronx for as long as I did, living in the Bronx my whole life, the community is the Bronx. The goal was within 5 years, we're gonna be on land together, we're gonna do this. And I got an email, or was forwarded an email, that got blasted out from Farm School NYC, an opportunity for land access and land stewardship. And even that, we were like, this is cool, but this isn't real, right? Like, this can't possibly be a real thing.
But the universe is giving you a sign.
Okay, right?
Sign.
She was like, I told you don't have to wait. And so we were just like, oh,
that's
God.
a good therapist. She manifested that for you. Mm-hmm.
She was a good therapist. I miss her. But yeah, like at that point, my friends, Jessica and I, and we had expanded our group. There were several other members at that point, people who were like, actually, yeah, like I'm so down to do this, either unemployed or about to be, or just really wanting to have ownership of the work we do in our community, and like just wanting to do something good instead of something that was enriching some corporation somewhere. We went to an event for the Greater Northern Catskill Agrarian Commons Project. That's what it was called at the time. And they were looking for people to come be a part of it, to meet an older gentleman who didn't have anyone to transition the land to. He was sitting on 287 acres. They really wanted to build an agrarian commons on it. And so we went to it just to see what that was about, especially because at the time we were considering building out an agrarian commons. We met with the older gentleman who actually had been looking for someone to transition his land to, or to buy his land for a while, and had met several groups and didn't really like any of them. And then he met us and loved us immediately. And
Aw.
Part of that was that when we met with him, we weren't like, let me tell you everything we can do with this land. Like, let me show you how we can make so much money. We were like, do you know what cover crop is? I think that made him feel more at ease about transitioning. He's 76 now. His body can't do the same things. And I think he was really fearful that his life's work and his father's life work of cover cropping, stewarding land with perennial grasses for grazing and for also just animal feed, building out easement programs, like all of that would go to waste because it would get developed. So he spent a lot of time working with institutions like American Farmland Trust, who actually helped us gain access to the land, and with the Watershed Agricultural Center in Delaware County to develop easements so that the land is protected in that way. And then Tommy worked with Iridescent Earth Collective and the Catskills Agrarian Alliance to develop the West Branch Commons, which is where we are now.
I love that. Another thing that we had talked about was the fact that there's so many farms that are nearby that are larger scale, but at times they produce a lot of produce that sometimes doesn't get properly distributed, or sometimes it goes to waste. So I'd love to know how Iridescent Earth Collective is like helping to stop that waste and like get it to the places that it needs to get, such as some of those food access points.
When we started doing that, I didn't even know that was a problem for them. And I think I had just assumed that was something that was like a thing that food banks did. Like they just went and got the food, or they, was organized in such a way. I think the reality is most farms produce more than they even take to market. And they don't have the capacity to store long term or to organize moving things. I know Berrybrook Farm used to try and do it, but they eventually got to a size where that didn't make financial sense for them to be coordinating. And so with us, it got to the point in the season where it was like, we're running a little short on food. And a friend, Daria, in the area was like, did y'all know Lucky Dog's had all these crates of food outside? And so it was kind of just like helping her move it, because she just was like, I can't see this go into the compost. And then talking to other farms and finding that it's not their desire to throw this food away. That's their hard work, right? They planted these little baby seedlings, nursed them and got them outside and farmed them for so long, harvested it, sent it to market, sat at market and presenting all this stuff. So for them, it's kind of a heartache, and they turn that back into compost, which they can later use back on the farm. But they're not able to take that stuff, then also add like an additional distribution point.
Right.
So for us, it was easy. We're small scale. We have 3 acres and we are already producing food specifically for those points of distribution. So for us, it's like a phone call, like, hey, what do you have? And they're like, oh, we have, eggplant, cucumbers, blah, blah, blah. We have it in these kinds of amounts. We'll set it aside for you. You can come and look through it and take what you want. And that's easy for us. It's like, well, we're already taking this stuff to Chester. It's just one stop. Berrybrook is not even 5 minutes from us. And they support us with so much other stuff that it feels like a really mutual,
right. Yeah.
beneficial relationship. The same with Lucky Dog, the same with any of the other farms that we connect with. And then for the pantries, it's really cool because they're local. So they're like, oh, this food is from here? And we're like, yeah.
I think it also speaks to just the structures of capitalism and how food access has become such a big issue that folks at food pantries and food banks don't expect fresh produce.
Having access to it here, in addition to that being our mission, it just feels like a responsibility as a member of this community. I feel like we operate more like a not-for-profit, but we haven't locked into that model yet. There's some downsides to that too.
So the model of your farm is mostly mutual aid under the trust. Yeah, I guess that is a question. Do you think that this type of model is sustainable?
It could be. Hear me out. The USDA could fund it, right? Because there's programs within the USDA that fund a specific kind of farmer. If you're not doing real crops, essentially, you're not going to have access to a lot of the programs. And I feel like there's a big encouragement on one kind of agriculture. Meanwhile, the small scale, medium scale, even the slightly bigger one, farms here are producing all the rest of the food that people eat. We were just talking about how like at the pantry, they don't usually see a lot of fresh food. And I'm like, you're right, but what do they see? Canned corn, canned beans, all that stuff. And so like, I think that it's like deeply important for communities to also have access to fresh produce, and for farmers like myself and other small farmers have access to institutional support too, because we provide those things for people. We provide the stuff that is not shelf stable. We provide the stuff that has to be farmed annually or every year. And so like our jobs are really hard already, and our jobs are really, really important too for people having a complete diet. The Farmer Bridge program, I would really like to see something in that program that would support smaller groups, smaller organizations that are also producing necessary food for communities, in particular communities that are local.
It's interesting because up until not long ago, urban agriculture or smaller farms weren't considered like real farms in the eyes of government. Now I'm glad that it's included. For example, New York City has its own Office of Urban Agriculture, which is great. But speaking on the federal level, and let's talking about the Farm Bill, as I know that it's in vote at this moment, the Farm Bill's not quite meeting the mark. Some folks are calling this Farm Bill a skinny Farm Bill. So what do you think is missing? So we're talking about supporting small farmers, but what are some other key things that you think are missing?
Restore the funding for NRCS, restore funding for Farm Service Agency. Those are programs that help small farms. And when you take away funding from that, longer lines, longer wait, less support. I'd like to see more investment in programs like what AFT is doing in terms of holding land. I think that's really cool. It makes it possible for us to compete, to even have access to this land. Youth programs to engage local community members and kind of excite people again about farming, and to start to reshape, because this area is traditionally known for, and a lot of the Catskills is for dairy farming, and that was a big industry, but the industry is changing now. And I would love for local young people to know that they don't have to leave their communities, that they can stay here and learn about growing food in their communities too. I would love to see more small farms pop up from people who are from here, more land access funding, land access program. Can't believe we just lost $300 million to support small farms. We need that back.
What would more inclusive farmer assistance look like in practice?
I think it would be good to make room for programming for farms like ours. So I feel like there's a pretty standard and or rigid definition of what a farm is and can be. And I think it cuts us out, and that's not fair, because we do, as we just identified, like we do provide a service and we do grow food for communities that need it and communities that are being left out from larger farm operations just because of the way that capitalism works. I also feel really strongly in community-led agriculture. So not just having like small-scale operations in a community, but that are like community-driven, led by that community and that community's needs. When you think about community garden, that's a big part of how the production of food there is shaped. It's not just because these individuals want to grow their own, but because they often want to produce food for others. And the garden that I grew up in had a farm stand. So where I'm coming from is just like, we need institutional support for operations that provide for communities on a smaller scale. That doesn't mean it can't change. It has to change.
Yeah, I think we're slowly seeing a breakdown of our systems. Not slowly, a fast breakdown of a lot of our systems. And I think the model of Iridescent Earth Collective and the community around you and organizations doing this work, I think, are going to come out on top. It will.
I have that faith as well. Like I said, I grew up in a community garden. I grew up in community organizing, and I see the benefits of that work. And I'm up here now connecting with people. Since we've been here, our collective went from 2 people to 8 or 9, and it includes artists and somatic practitioners and bakers and dancers and all these people who are deeply interested in land stewardship, especially in a way that is not extractive, but also deeply committed to shifting culture. And so when we're talking about our institutional, I keep using that word because I'm like, that's just for the future, right? Institutional. We're going to make the money and have the agroecology. But the idea is that farming is not just putting the seeds in the ground, growing the thing, and then taking it out of the ground. It's connecting with people. It's making relationships with the somatic practitioners so that you're able to manage your nervous system while you're on the farm, dealing with everything else that's happening in the world, dealing with the stress and frustration of it. It's working with artists who want to make art for the farm, who want to make handouts for the farm, who want to help you with branding for the farm because they think your program is cool and they want to be a part of something that's meaningful.